From wherever you're listening, good morning, good evening, or good night. You're tuned to the UFO Forums podcast. Tonight, we examine the Rendlesham Forest incident of 1980, often described as Britain's most famous UFO encounter. Before we begin, remember to like and subscribe, and let's get started.
It's fantastic to be back. And honestly, this is a big one. I feel like we've been, circling this case for a while.
We really have.
If you're into this topic, or even if you're just a casual observer of, say, Cold War history, it feels like all roads eventually lead to Suffolk, England in December of 1980.
It really is the big one, isn't it? I mean, we've covered some absolutely wild stories on this show. We've done the lonely highways, the abduction claims from bedrooms, the strange lights out in the desert.
Right, the classic stuff.
But usually there's this little safety valve in the back of your brain. You can always fall back on, well, maybe that guy was just tired. Or maybe that was a weather balloon reflecting swamp gas. You can, dismiss it.
Exactly. Skepticism is pretty easy when the witness is isolated or the stakes are, well, low.
But this just feels different right out of the gate. We are not talking about a guy in a pickup truck seeing a light.
No, not at all.
We were talking about the United States Air Force. We are talking about nuclear weapons. We're talking about a lieutenant colonel, a deputy base commander, literally running into a dark forest with a dictaphone.
With a tape recorder.
And recording a live play-by-play of an encounter with a craft that seems to defy physics.
That is the key distinction.
Yeah,
That's what sets Rendlesham apart. It's the credibility of the witnesses and the sheer stakes of the location. This isn't just, a ghost story. This is a potential national security crisis involving two of the most powerful militaries in the world.
And all during the absolute peak of Cold War tension.
The absolute peak.
They call it Britain's Roswell for a reason. You've got a crashed, or I guess we should be careful and say, landed craft right next to a super sensitive military installation.
Right next to it. And then what follows is something that looks an awful lot like a massive, and I'd say pretty clumsy government cover-up.
Okay, so let's unpack this properly. I don't want to just rush to the aliens or, the wild stuff. We need to understand the board before we start looking at the pieces. Where are we, and what is the vibe in 1980?
Context is absolutely everything here. If you don't understand the atmosphere of the time, the event itself just doesn't make sense, so you have to transport yourself back. It's late December 1980.
Right.
The Cold War is not a history lesson people read about. It is a daily reality. The Soviet Union has just invaded Afghanistan. The Solidarity movement is rising up in Poland.
The doomsday clock is ticking very, very close to midnight.
Everyone is on a hair trigger, an absolute hair trigger.
So in the middle of this geopolitical pressure cooker, where does this story take place?
We go to East Anglia, that bump on the right side of the UK map, specifically to a place known as the Twin Bases Complex.
Right.
RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge.
RAF, so Royal Air Force, British.
In name only. That's the thing you have to understand. The name says RAF, but don't let that fool you. Operationally, this was Little America.
So these were American bases on British soil.
They were leased to the United States Air Force under NATO agreements. And they were not just, storing blankets and MREs. This was the tip of the spear for NATO's defense of Europe.
I read that these were some of the busiest, most important bases in the entire NATO alliance at that time.
Oh, absolutely. They hosted the 81st Tactical Fighter Wing. And their primary asset, their big tool, was the A-10 Thunderbolt II. You probably know it as the Warthog.
Oh, I know the Warthog. That's the plane that looks like a flying tank. It's basically just a giant rotary cannon with wings built around it, an engine of destruction.
That's a perfect description. It's an ugly, beautiful, terrifying machine designed for one single purpose, destroying Soviet tanks.
So the guys stationed there were serious business.
Absolutely. The pilots and crews at Bentwaters and Woodbridge, their job was to be ready to fly low and slow over the Fulda Gap in Germany and stop the Red Army if they decided to roll west. These were serious, thick-skinned, combat-ready military personnel.
Not the types prone to flights of fancy or scaring themselves in the woods.
Not at all. And this brings us to the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say, the elephant in the bunker. Because the A-10s weren't the only thing at these bases.
No. This is the crucial part, isn't it? The nuclear angle.
This is the crucial part. Although it was officially classified at the time, and the U.S. government would, neither confirm nor deny it, it's now widely accepted by researchers, by historians, that these bases housed a massive stockpile of nuclear ordnance.
The numbers I saw in the research notes were they were staggering. Something like 300,000 kilotons.
It's a number so big it almost loses its meaning. It's hard to even comprehend. So let's break that down to make it real for a second.
Please.
The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, the one that devastated an entire city and literally changed the course of history.
Yeah.
That was roughly 15 kilotons.
15. And they had 300,000 kilotons worth of power just sitting in the woods in Suffolk.
Give or take. We're talking about tactical nuclear weapons, the kind designed to be strapped to those A-10s to stop a Soviet advance. This was, you could argue, the largest single stockpile of tactical nukes in Europe at the time.
So if you are an alien intelligence or a time traveler or even a Soviet spy,
Yeah.
and you want to see where the humans keep the matches that could burn the entire world down,
You go to Rendlesham, it's the hot spot.
that just puts a whole new layer of terror on this whole incident. These guys aren't just guarding a fence, they are literally guarding the apocalypse.
That's right. And the physical geography of the place plays a huge role here, too.
How so?
Well, you have the two bases, Bentwaters and Woodbridge, and they're separated by a couple of miles. And sitting right in between them is Rendlesham Forest.
This isn't like a city park with a playground.
No, this is a dense commercial pine forest. It's ancient, it's dark, and at night it is pitch black. There is no ambient city light out there, just dark.
So you have these high-tech nuclear bases sandwiching a dark, almost primal forest. It's almost a literary setup.
It really is, and that is exactly where our story begins.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really sift through all of it. The conflicting reports, the physical evidence, because yes, there is actual physical evidence, and that controversial audio tape to try and figure out what actually happened during those 3 nights in the woods.
That's the plan.
So let's jump in. Night 1. It's December 26, 1980. Boxing Day in the UK.
It is. It's the early hours, around 3:00 a.m. The Christmas festivities are over. The turkey's been eaten. It's a freezing cold night. The ground is hard with frost.
And you have patrolmen out on duty.
You do. Patrolman John Burroughs and Bud Steffens, they're doing their routine security rounds near the east gate of RAF Woodbridge.
Is the East Gate a busy spot? Like a main entrance?
Not at all. It's the back door, really. It leads directly into the forest. It's supposed to be quiet, boring even. They're probably just sitting in their Jeep, trying to stay warm, waiting for their shift to finally end.
And then the routine breaks.
It completely shatters. They look out toward the tree line, and they spot these strange lights down in the forest. And that's a key detail, not up in the sky, down in the trees.
What kind of lights?
Red, blue, and white lights, flashing or pulsing.
Okay, now if I'm a security guard at an airbase and I see lights in the trees, my first thought isn't Martians.
No, and neither was theirs. Their training kicked in immediately. They assumed an aircraft had crashed.
That makes sense. They're right next to a runway.
Exactly. It's a very logical assumption that a civilian plane or maybe a glider has come down into the canopy. It's an emergency.
So the adrenaline spikes. This isn't a curiosity. It's a potential rescue mission.
That's right. So they call it in to the flight chief, and Sergeant Jim Peniston is dispatched to investigate. But when Peniston arrives at the gate, the whole dynamic changes. Instantly.
This is one of those cinematic moments in the story.
Yeah.
Because Bud Steffens, who has been staring at these lights while he's waiting for backup to arrive,
He's been watching it.
he says something to Peniston that just completely shifts the paradigm of the entire night.
He does. He looks Peniston right in the eye and says, "It didn't crash, it landed."
It didn't crash, it landed. That line.
Yeah.
It gives me chills every single time I read it.
Because it implies control. It implies intent. An aircraft crash is chaotic, it's noisy, it's fiery, you hear crunching metal, you see flames.
Right.
A landing is silent, it's deliberate. Steffens was telling him this thing is under control.
So Peniston, Burroughs, and another airman, Ed Cabansag, they decide to head into the forest to investigate. They leave their vehicle at the edge of the woods.
Yeah, the trees are way too dense, they have to go in on foot. And they're armed, they're alert, they're going into a tactical situation.
And this is where the environment itself starts to get weird. It starts to turn against them.
It does. As they get closer to these lights, there are radios. These are standard military issue, rugged pieces of tech. They start to malfunction.
They just cut out.
They cut out
And-
static, then nothing. They can't reach the base. They can't reach the Jeep. They're on their own.
Radio failure is a classic trope in UFO movies. But in real life, for military ops, that is an absolute nightmare. It means you are completely isolated.
It's terrifying. And it wasn't just the radios. The men reported that the air itself felt different. Peniston talked about this feeling of static electricity. He said the hair on his arms and the back of his neck was literally standing up, like the air was charged.
And then there's this weird sensation they described of time distortion. This is one of the strangest parts for me.
It is. They said moving through the woods felt like wading through waist-high water or thick soup, as if the very physics of the world were getting heavy.
That's so bizarre.
Researchers often call this the Oz factor. It's a reported phenomenon in these high strangeness cases where the witness feels like they enter a bubble of reality that's separate from the normal world.
And inside that bubble,
Silence.
complete and total silence. The ambient forest noise, the wind in the trees, nocturnal animals, crickets, anything. It just stops.
That kind of silence is almost louder than noise. It's a signal that you are not in Kansas anymore. Exactly. They are in the bubble. And in that bubble, they find it. Pennison steps into a clearing, and after being initially blinded by a bright white flash, he sees the object.
And we aren't talking about a vague light here. He gives a very detailed, very tactile description of this.
Oh yeah, this is not a light in the sky.
So walk us through what he saw. Paint the picture for us.
Penniston describes a triangular craft. It's not a skyscraper, it's compact. He said it was roughly 9 feet by 9 feet at the base and maybe 6 or 7 feet tall.
And the material.
He described it as having a smooth, black, glass-like appearance.
Like obsidian or onyx?
Yes, exactly like that. Or opaque black glass. He specifically noted there were no rivets, no seams, no nuts and bolts. It looked like it was molded from a single seamless piece of material. And it was either resting on the ground or hovering just off it on 3 legs.
What about the lighting he saw from a distance?
Up close, he could see it had a bank of blue lights running along the side and a pulsing red and white light on top. But the most striking thing, the detail that gets everyone, is that it was completely silent.
No engine whine, no exhaust smell.
Nothing. Just there, in the woods.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
And where some people might start to get skeptical. Penniston doesn't just look at it from a distance.
No, he doesn't. He's a security professional. His job is to investigate.
He actually walks right up to this thing.
He does. He circles it. He does a full walk around. He says the air right around it felt warm, noticeably warmer than the freezing air of the forest. And he touches the skin of the craft.
He actually put his hands on it.
He did. He said it felt like smooth glass, but warm to the touch. But then he notices something else. Something on the surface. Symbols.
Symbols, like writing.
Etched into the surface of this smooth black craft were these symbols that Penniston compared to Egyptian hieroglyphs or maybe pictograms. They were about 3 inches high.
And there was something weird about the texture of them, right?
Yeah, and this is such a specific, strange detail. He said that while the rest of the craft was perfectly smooth, running his hand over these symbols felt rough, like running your hand over sandpaper.
I just can't imagine that. Standing in a dark forest, your radio is dead, you're touching a craft of unknown origin, and you're tracing your fingers over what look like hieroglyphs.
It's primal. It's unbelievable. And then Penniston claims something happened right at that moment of contact. A download.
This is the more esoteric part of his account, the part that really splits the audience.
It is, and we have to treat it carefully. He claims that upon touching those symbols, he was hit with a blinding white flash of light and mentally saw a rapid, overwhelming sequence of ones and zeros.
Binary code.
Binary code, like a data transfer.
So not a sound, but a visual flood in his mind's eye.
Exactly. He said it was just an endless stream of data pouring directly into his brain. He felt completely overwhelmed by it.
We'll definitely come back to what that code supposedly said later on, because it is a wild twist that completely changes the whole theory of the case. But for now, the encounter ends. The craft decides it's time to leave.
And the departure is just as anomalous as the arrival. It lifts up slowly at first. It retracts its landing gear, those 3 legs up, into the body of the craft. And then Penniston says it moved in the blink of an eye.
So 0 to Mach 10 in a second.
Faster than that. He describes it as instantaneous acceleration. No sound, no sonic boom. Just there 1 second and gone the next.
What about Burroughs? Did he see this too, or was he too far back?
Burroughs was standing further back, acting as cover as per their training. He describes seeing a bright red, oval, sort of sun-like light. He witnessed that blinding flash and the object vanishing instantly.
So you have corroboration on the movement and the light, even if their specific vantage points gave them slightly different details of the craft itself.
Exactly. One guy is up close, one is further back, but they both see the same impossible departure.
So they get back to the base. They're shaken, obviously. They've just seen the impossible, and they check their watches.
And here is the physical proof of that wading through soup sensation they described. Their watches were 45 minutes behind the actual time.
45 minutes.
Yeah. They felt like they had been gone for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, but they had lost nearly an hour of time.
Missing time. That is the classic hallmark of so many abduction or close encounter phenomena.
Yeah.
It suggests that whatever field that craft was generating, it was milking with the local space-time.
Or at the very least, their perception of it. Either way, they are missing 45 minutes of their lives. They can't account for it.
So they get debriefed. And I imagine their reception from their superiors wasn't exactly warm and fuzzy.
No, they're told in no uncertain terms to keep their mouths shut. The command tells them, and this is a quote, Project Blue Book ended in 1969.
Which is basically code for.
It's code for. The Air Force does not investigate UFOs anymore, therefore you did not see a UFO. Now go back to work.
Denial is a powerful policy. But you can't just wish away what happened. Because the next morning, December 27th, the sun comes up.
And the evidence is still sitting there, in the woods.
That's the problem with a physical landing, isn't it? It leaves traces.
It does. So Peniston, being the diligent NCO he is, goes back to the site in the daylight.
And what does he find?
He finds 3 symmetrical depressions in the ground where he said the legs of the craft were. They were arranged in a perfect triangle, about 1.5 inches deep and 7 inches in diameter.
And he takes plaster casts of them, right? Like he's treating it like a crime scene.
He does. And he finds damage to the trees. Branches are snapped off about 10 to 12 feet up, creating a rough clearing in the canopy. It looked exactly like something heavy had descended down through the branches to land in that specific spot.
Okay, so now we have indentations in the ground, we have tree damage, and this is where the story shifts gears, because now the top brass gets involved. Enter Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt.
Yes. And we need to be very clear about who Charles Halt is. He is not some impressionable kid or a UFO enthusiast. He is the deputy base commander.
He's the boss.
He's a career officer, a very pragmatic, no-nonsense kind of man.
And he's not happy about these rumors.
He's furious. He arrives at the police desk the next morning, and he sees his men giggling and whispering about UFOs and little green men. And his reaction is pure annoyance. He thinks it's ridiculous.
So he thinks it's all nonsense.
Total skeptic.
Yep.
He thinks it's a prank, or maybe they misidentified a light, or maybe the men were drinking on duty. He decides he is going to go out there and investigate personally for the specific purpose of debunking it.
He wants to prove it's nothing so he can squash the rumors and get his base back to normal.
Precisely. So he takes a team out there, and being a thorough guy, they bring equipment. They bring Geiger counters, radiation detectors.
Okay, and this is where the skeptic starts to get confused.
This is where his whole worldview starts to crumble.
Right.
Because they turn on the Geiger counters near the landing site, and they get readings.
Significant readings.
Very significant. They find spikes of beta and gamma radiation in the 3 indentations where the legs were supposed to be. And they get another high reading in the absolute center of that triangle.
How high are we talking?
The readings were reported to be 10 times the normal background level of radiation for that area.
10 times. That is not a randing error. That is not, oh, maybe the soil's a little weird here.
No, that is a serious anomaly. And they test the trees, too. The side of the tree facing the landing spot also showed moderate radiation readings.
So now Halt is standing there in the cold daylight, looking at physical depressions in the ground and watching a Geiger counter needle spike off the charts.
And he has to admit, something happened here. Something radioactive landed in these woods.
And that brings us to night 2, December 28th. The weirdness isn't over. In fact, it's about to ramp up significantly.
It really is. It's the base Christmas party, the awards dinner. It's supposed to be a night off, a bit of relaxation.
Right.
Colonel Halt is there, probably trying to forget about the weird radiation readings for a few hours, eating a steak. And then Lieutenant Bruce England rushes into the mess hall.
White as a sheet. That's the description I always see. He was pale.
Visibly shaken. He interrupts the base commander and Halt, and he delivers the news. It's back!
Wow, that moment must have been electric. The thing they were trying to debunk is back for round 2.
Exactly. So Halt grabs a Team Sergeant Neville's, Bobby Ball, a few others, and they head out. But this time, Halt is smart. He's not just going out to look.
He grabbed his personal dictaphone.
And thank goodness he did, because the Halt tape is, you could argue, one of the single most compelling pieces of evidence in the entire history of ufology.
Because it's real time.
It is a real-time audio recording of military personnel engaging with an unknown phenomenon. It's not a memory from 20 years later. It is happening now, and you can hear it.
Before we even get to what's on the tape, let's talk about the equipment again, because they brought out these things called lighthouse, right? Big gas-powered floodlights.
Yes, big industrial units on trailers. The idea was to light up the whole forest so they could see exactly what was going on. But just like the radios on night one,
They didn't work.
the lighthouse refused to work. They just wouldn't turn on. The engines wouldn't catch. Dead in the water.
And the cameras they brought.
Same thing. They brought cameras, took pictures. The film later turned out to be completely blank or whited out. It's like the phenomenon was emitting some kind of dampening field that interfered with anything electrical or even chemical.
But the magnetic tape and the dictaphone, that worked.
It did. And if you listen to that tape, and we have the transcripts, you can hear the tension. You can hear their breathing. And one of the first things they notice isn't the light itself, but the sound of the environment, specifically the animals.
The barnyard animals from a nearby farm were going crazy.
Absolutely frenzied. Halt actually records it on the tape. He says, "We're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmer's barnyard animals, very, very active, making an awful lot of noise.
Cows and sheep just screaming.
Kicking stall doors, making a racket." And then, just as suddenly as it started, they go deathly silent.
Like sentinel species. Animals often sense these things before we do.
Mm-hmm.
And then they finally see the object. Halt describes it as a red eye.
Yes. He says on the tape it looks like an eye. It's glowing red with a black center, and it appears to be winking or maybe shuddering. And this wasn't just a static light stuck in the sky. He describes it moving.
This is a crucial detail. Skeptics always say, oh, it was a star or it was the lighthouse. But Halt specifically says it was zigzagging through the trees.
He's very clear. He says it was navigating, avoiding obstacles. It was conscious of its environment. And at one point, he describes it dripping something.
Dripping something.
He says it looked like molten metal falling from the object onto the forest floor.
Molten metal dripping from a flying eye in the woods. That is terrifying. It sounds like something mechanical failing or maybe some kind of propulsion byproduct.
Yeah. Could be. And then the object silently explodes. But not a detonation that destroys it. It's more like it splits into 5 separate white lights and they just scatter into the sky.
But the night is far from over.
Yeah.
This is where the encounter turns from curious to aggressive.
This is where it gets scary. The laser beams.
Yeah.
Halt reports seeing objects in the sky to the north or south of their position. He says they are moving in these sharp, angular patterns, like grid search patterns, as if they are scanning the entire area.
And then one of them shoots a beam of light down at them.
It does. Halt describes it as pencil thin, like a laser, and it hits the ground just 10 feet away from Halt and his men.
10 feet. That is essentially a warning shot.
Or a demonstration of capability. He said it didn't radiate light like a flashlight beam that spreads out. It was focused, coherent light. He actually questions it on the tape. You can hear him say, "Is this a warning? Is this a weapon?"
You could hear the fear in his voice. He realizes they are completely and totally outmatched.
And then the object moves. It doesn't just stay over the woods, it moves over the base itself, and specifically over the weapons storage area.
The WSA. The bunkers holding the nuclear weapons.
The nukes. Halt watches, completely helpless, as this object moves directly over the hardened concrete bunkers and beams a light directly down into them.
This connects to so many other UFO cases where they seem to be intensely interested in our nuclear capabilities.
It is the recurring theme. You see it at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, the memo sightings, even Soviet encounters that have since been declassified. UFOs appear where the nukes are stored. It's almost like they're doing an inventory check.
Or demonstration.
Yeah.
We can see what you are hiding. Your concrete walls don't matter to us.
Exactly. So you have the deputy base commander of a nuclear-armed facility witnessing an unknown craft shine what looks like a laser directly into a nuclear bunker. I cannot even imagine the panic in the command center, or at least in Halt's own mind.
He admitted later he was petrified. He didn't know if they were about to be attacked or if the nukes were going to be detonated or disabled. It was a complete loss of control.
The terrifying moment.
And we have to address the Night 3 controversy. Or maybe it's a different perspective on Night 2. But this involves a man named Larry Warren.
Larry Warren. This is probably the stickiest part of the Rendlesham story, and we have to be fair to all sides here. Warren was a security policeman who later became a whistleblower. He wrote a book called Left at Eastgate.
And he claims he was there.
He claims he was there on a third night or perhaps a different part of the second night's events that Halt wasn't witness to.
And his story goes
Uh,
a lot further than lights and beams.
oh, much further. Warren claims he saw the craft on the ground, but he also claims he saw entities.
Entities?
3 small, glowing, humanoid figures floating near the craft.
So, aliens. He's claiming he saw actual aliens.
That's his claim, yes. And he claims he saw a high-ranking officer. He suggests it was the base commander, Colonel Conrad, actually approach these entities. He describes a scene straight out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where the military leadership engages in some kind of protocol to communicate with them.
That is a massive escalation of the narrative.
Yeah.
From a strange light to first contact.
It's a huge leap. And Warren also claims he has these disoriented memories of being taken to an underground facility beneath the base, being shown films of aliens. It's a very intense, very detailed, a very controversial account.
But there's a problem with his credibility, right? The other guys, the main witnesses, they don't back him up.
There is enormous friction here. Other key witnesses, including Colonel Halt and Jim Penniston, have stated on the record multiple times that Larry Warren wasn't there.
They say he wasn't part of the team in the woods.
They claim he's making it up entirely, that he's inserted himself into the story after the fact.
So is he making it up? Or are they trying to discredit him? What's the thinking there?
It's so complicated. Some researchers believe Warren might have been fed disinformation, maybe even by intelligence agencies, to make him sound crazy and discredit the whole event.
So muddying the waters.
Exactly. Or maybe he really was there, but his story has been exaggerated over time. Or, and you have to consider this, maybe he is telling the truth and the others are trying to distance themselves from the little green men aspect to keep their own credibility intact.
Because it's easier to say, I saw a craft with lights, than I saw an alien.
Much easier. So Larry Warren is often viewed as a person who made the real documented event sound too ridiculous for the mainstream to believe.
Which actually leads us perfectly into the aftermath. Because whether Warren is telling the truth or not, the reaction from the military suggests they wanted this whole thing buried, and buried deep.
The cover-up was immediate and it was aggressive. The Office of Special Investigations, the OSI, got involved. And these are the guys who handle serious internal investigations.
Yeah.
The Air Force's FBI, basically.
And Penniston and Burroughs were interrogated. We're not talking about a friendly chat with HR here.
No, not at all. They describe a very hostile environment. Halt and the other airmen have claimed they were subjected to chemical interrogation.
What does that mean?
Sodium pentothal. Truth serum.
Wait, they drugged their own soldiers? That sounds highly illegal even for the military back then.
That is the allegation. Halt says the OSI agents were ruthless, and they also allege hypnosis. They were supposedly put under hypnosis to extract information, or, as Halt suspects, maybe to plant false memories.
Plant false memories. Why would they do that?
To scramble the narrative. It's a classic counterintelligence strategy. If you have a guy saying, I saw a solid craft, and then under hypnosis you convince him he saw little green men or a giant floating bus, when he eventually goes to the press, he sounds insane.
You mix the truth with lies so the public rejects the whole thing.
Precisely. It's a way of discrediting your own witness.
That is dark. There's also the story of Sergeant Pastenza.
Right. Pastenza was another witness. He was allegedly told during his interrogation point blank that bullets are cheap.
Bullets are cheap.
Yeah.
That's a direct threat.
It's a death threat. He was told to sign a document saying he only saw a lighthouse, or else. It shows you just how desperate they were to contain this story.
But they couldn't contain Halt entirely. He was a lieutenant colonel. He wrote a memo.
He did, the famous Halt memo. He typed it up on his office typewriter. The subject line was simply, unexplained lights. And he sent it to the UK Ministry of Defence, the MOD.
Why did he do that? What was the goal?
He wanted a British investigation. His thinking was, hey, this happened on your soil outside the wire of our base. You guys need to look into this. He was trying to pass the buck or at least get some official answers from another government.
And the MOD's response?
No defense significance.
No defense significance. A nuclear base was buzzed by an unknown craft that shot lasers at the ground.
They declined to investigate. They completely washed their hands of it. But that memo didn't just disappear. It sat in a file until 1983. And then, through the Freedom of Information Act, it leaked.
To the news of the world, the British tabloid.
Exactly. Front page of the paper, UFO lands in Suffolk. And it had Halt's memo printed right there for everyone to see. That just blew the lid off the entire story.
Because now you had an official U.S. Air Force document signed by a lieutenant colonel confirming an encounter.
That's why we are still talking about this today. It is the smoking gun document of the case.
And naturally, once it was public, the ridicule campaign started in earnest.
Oh, instantly. The tabloids ran with little green men. There were silly stories circulating that the Airmen were out there trying to fix a spaceship with base avionics. Halt believes this ridicule was engineered.
A counterintelligence move.
He thinks so. If you make the public laugh at the story, they won't demand serious answers about the massive nuclear security breach that occurred.
It's the swamp gas of the 1980s. Okay, so let's look at the skeptical explanations. We have to be rigorous. The big one is always the lighthouse.
The Orford Ness Lighthouse. It's a coastal lighthouse about 5 miles away from the forest. And the skeptical argument is that the flashing light the men saw was just the lighthouse beam cutting through the trees as it rotated.
It sounds plausible on paper if you don't know the details, but Halt shut that down pretty definitively, right?
He did, repeatedly. Halt was very familiar with that lighthouse. He lived there for years. He ate dinner near it often. On the tape, and in every single interview he's given since, he explicitly states that he could see the lighthouse and the UFO at the same time.
Two distinct and separate objects.
Yes. The lighthouse was fixed on the coast, doing its regular sweep. The UFO was moving through the trees, hovering and dripping molten metal. Lighthouses do not navigate the forest, and they certainly don't drip metal.
Okay, what about natural phenomena? I've heard there was a meteor shower that night.
There was. Fireballs were reported, and sure, a fireball can look impressive, but meteors don't hover. They don't navigate around trees, they fall, they burn up.
And they don't shoot pencil-thin laser beams at your feet.
No, a meteor is just gravity in action. This was intelligent control.
And then there's the SA prank theory, I've heard this one a few times, that the British SAS were messing with the Americans as revenge for some bar fight or to test their security.
The story goes that the SAS parachuted into the woods with flares and burning manure to spook the Yanks.
Burning manure.
To create a weird smell and smoke, I guess. But again, you just have to apply basic logic. Does a prank explain radiation readings 10 times the background level?
No.
Does it explain the radar confirmation? Because Colonel Halt later confirmed that radar operators at both RAF Bentwaters and RAF Watcham saw the object zip across their screens at thousands of miles an hour.
You can't fake a radar signature with a flare on a parachute.
You absolutely cannot. And you do not play pranks inside the perimeter of a nuclear-armed facility. The guards are authorized to use lethal force, and SAS prankster would have been shot. It just doesn't hold water.
So we are left with a genuine mystery. But we can't leave this deep dive without touching on the woo aspect, the high strangeness. We mentioned Peniston's binary code download earlier.
Yes. This is the rabbit hole within the rabbit hole. For 30 years, Peniston kept this mostly to himself. He was afraid of the ridicule. But in 2010, he finally released the notebook. He claims he wrote down the ones and zeros he saw in his mind immediately after the encounter.
And someone eventually decoded it.
They did. Programmers put it through an ASCII converter. And this is where you just have to suspend your disbelief for a moment and just listen to the data. The code supposedly translates to a message.
What did it say?
It starts with exploration of humanity. And then it lists a series of geographic coordinates.
Coordinates to where? Not just random places, I assume.
No. To very significant locations on Earth. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the Nazca Lines in Peru, Taishanhua in China, the Temple of Apollo in Greece.
So ancient mysterious sites.
Hi, Brazil?
Hi, Brazil. Isn't that a mythical island that doesn't exist?
It is a legendary phantom island off the coast of Ireland that appears on ancient maps but isn't actually there, or at least isn't there anymore. It's a huge part of Celtic mythology.
So we have a message listing ancient wonders and a phantom island. But there's a final twist at the end of the message, isn't there?
There is. The message ends with 2 words, origin year 8100.
8100, that's far in the future.
It implies that the craft wasn't extraterrestrial from another planet, but extratempestrial.
Another time.
From another time.
That the occupants were us, humans from the future.
That puts a whole new spin on the exploration of humanity part. If they are us, maybe they're coming back to study their own history. Or maybe to stop something from happening. Or to observe a critical turning point. And think about where they were. A nuclear base in 1980 at the absolute height of the Cold War. If you were a future historian or a future scientist, wouldn't you want to come back and look at the weapons that almost destroy the entire world?
That gives me goosebumps. It's a fascinating theory. It solves the "why do they look like us?" question that comes up in some reports.
It fits with the binary code, A human computer language. It fits with the humanoid shape that Larry Warren described. It fits with the precise landing rather than a crash. Maybe it was a field trip for a future history class.
Okay, let's try and bring it back to reality for a second. What does this all mean for us, the listener? Why should we care about some strange lights in the woods 40 years ago?
We should care because the government cares. They reacted with fear. They reacted with a cover-up. They bullied their own witnesses. If this was nothing, if this was just a lighthouse, you don't drug your own soldiers. You don't classify the files for decades. You don't threaten people with cheap bullets.
It's the reaction that proves the reality of the event.
That's it. And the physical traces. The radiation was real. The indentations in the ground were real. The audio tape is real. You can hear the fear in a lieutenant colonel's voice. This was not a story told around a campfire. This was a tactical situation that was out of their control.
So, to summarize the mystery, we have credible, high-ranking military witnesses, we have physical traces, we have contemporaneous audio, and we have a government response that just screams, cover up.
And we have Lord Hill Norton. We can't forget him.
Yes, tell us about him, a very important figure.
Lord Hill Norton was a former chief of the defense staff in the UK, a 5-star admiral, the top military man in Britain. He took a huge interest in this case, and he had a quote that I think sums it up perfectly.
What did he say?
He said, "Either a craft of unknown origin landed, or the commander of a nuclear base and his men were all hallucinating."
And both of those options are absolutely terrifying.
Correct. If a craft landed, our airspace is vulnerable to a technology we can't possibly comprehend. If the men guarding our nuclear weapons were hallucinating en masse, then we have a catastrophic breakdown in military reliability. Both options demand an answer.
And 40 years later, we still don't have an official one.
Not officially, but the evidence, I think, speaks for itself.
I want to leave the listener with that final provocative thought about origin year 8100. If that binary code is real, and if that craft was us from the future, what were they looking for in a nuclear weapons storage facility in 1980? Were they just checking the inventory? Or were they trying to warn us about what those weapons eventually do to us?
That is the question, isn't it? Perhaps a laser beam wasn't an attack, perhaps it was a scan, or perhaps it was a fix.
A fix. Now that is something to mull over. Maybe they were tweaking the timeline.
It's a mind-bending possibility, but one we can't entirely ignore.
That's it for this deep dive into the Rendlesham Forest incident. We'd love to hear your theories, time travelers, aliens, or the most expensive elaborate prank in history. Let us know. Thanks for listening and keep watching the skies.
Stay curious.